Hello, dear students and esteemed learners. Welcome again. Welcome to my course on Sociology of Health. And this is lecture number 24. Today, we will talk about food, nutrition, and safe drinking water in the context of public health. Because the theme that we are discussing this week is public health. We have been trying to understand different aspects and dimensions related to public health. Now, in the previous lectures, we have tried to understand what do we understand by public health, how it came into existence in the United Kingdom and then in the US. Then we talked about the growth of the discipline and the approach in Indian context also. And then we took the support from World Health Organization's definition, right? And then taking clue from the WHO definition, we try to identify the goals of public health as well as the means through which those goals could be achieved. So, we have discussed all these different aspects related to public health. Now, food, nutrition, and safe drinking water are very important, just like sanitation that we discussed in one of the previous lectures. So, in this topic, we will try to cover hunger and food, then malnutrition among women and children, malnutrition and public health, and then safe drinking water. Needless to say, whatever we are going to discuss, the broader perspective is related to public health, right? So, with this kind of understanding, we will try to discuss all these things in this lecture. So, when we talk about hunger and food, so I think we all are familiar with these two words. Actually, every human being is familiar with these two words, hunger and food. Because historically, the man's effort to survive has been has remained linked to his efforts to satisfy his hunger and get food. So, since the beginning of human civilization till now, the problem of food and hunger is there. You may get surprised that the problem of hunger is still is this a relevant problem even now, and for that basically I want to draw your attention towards two very important development paradigms: the millennium development goals and the sustainable development goals. I'm sure you might have heard about the Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, two very important paradigms of development applicable globally. Although we will talk about these two paradigms of development in separate lectures at length, but here I wanted to draw your attention towards the first goal and the second goal of the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So these SDGs, as we generally speak them, these are applicable from 2015 to 2030. That means, as of now, we are basically operating under the global understanding that we all nation states are trying to achieve the SDGs. And the goal number one is talking about ending poverty in all its forms, and goal number two is talking about zero hunger. That means, as of now, we are not in a state of zero hunger. We have not achieved the goal of zero hunger. That means people around the world are still facing and witnessing the problem of hunger. That is why that is appearing as the first and second goals in the SDGs. And it is not like we have never been thinking about these things, because just before the SDGs, we had the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, and there we had 8 goals. And goal number one, first goal itself, was talking about eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. That means, although we made effort consistently, and although it became goal number one of the Millennium Development Goals, but the problem of hunger is still existing, because the problem of hunger is related with the problem of poverty, but it is not just related with poverty, it's related to several other things also. So there is the problem of scarcity, as it may happen during the famines, but there is also the problem of distribution, which is basically a challenge which is prevailing in almost most part of the world, right? In the contemporary context also. So we will try to understand the food and hunger, but in the beginning itself, we got to know about the brutal reality of the contemporary world, that even today, hunger is a problem. And of course, we'll talk about food because we need food to satisfy our hunger. Here I have mentioned one quotation from the Food and Agriculture Organization, basically, and that quotation is in collaboration with WHO also. FO is basically working in collaboration with WHO, and this statement actually helps us to understand where we are situated. Humans need food to survive. It, combined with the air and water, forms the foundation of human life. It is both a social and fundamental need. The human's body need for food influences society via all food production, consumption, and distribution activities. That means the need of food is linked to the survival instinct of humans, and that is also linked to the basic functioning of the nation state and of course the global community. And there are so many things, basically, like the production, the consumption, the distribution kind of thing, which are all linked to related with food. That means it's a big, huge challenge, even in contemporary context, right? So from that point of view, we will try to understand food and then nutrition, because these are the most important components of public health. Now, hunger is a state of not having enough food to eat, especially when this causes illness or death, right? So we understand hunger. Hunger has remained one of the biggest challenge because of scarcity, what happens during the famines, and because of improper ownership or distributions, basically which is related to the type of the society or the state it is. Food is one of the most significant determinant of human life, human health, and human happiness. Now, when we say that one of the most significant determinant of human health, for that basically we need to understand what happens when we consume food, because food contains so many things, and the most important thing is the nutrients. So we need to understand nutrients and the nutrition. So food is largely made up of macronutrients like carbohydrate, fat, and protein, and then micronutrients. There are so many micronutrients that we all are aware of, like potassium, sodium, calcium, iron, and several other things, several types of vitamins, and all these things. So the presence of these micro and macronutrients makes it food. And when the body is basically getting the proportionate amount of these macro and micronutrients, the proportionate means body needs these components in a specific proportion, right? So when the body is getting all these macro and micronutrients in the proportion that is required for the growth and sustenance of the body, then that is known as nutrition. And the absence of that is basically known as malnutrition. It means if the body is not getting enough quantity of either of those nutrients, maybe the macro or the micro, then that will be identified as malnutrition. So malnutrition may operate at two levels: undernutrition and overnutrition. Overnutrition means that the body is getting more than the required quantity of certain nutrients, right? So this overnutrition is also a problem, and undernutrition is a huge problem that I think we all know and understand, right? So when we talk about food, we are talking about nutrition also. But when we talk about nutrition, then definitely we are also talking about food, because nutrition will come only through food. So if there is no food, there will not be any possibility of getting nutrition. Now, malnutrition among women and children. Although malnutrition is a problem for all people, irrespective of their sex or their age, but at certain stages in our life, that becomes very important, very critical, and very crucial. As we all know that during childhood, nutrition is very important, because the child has to grow, and the body needs all these macro as well as micronutrients for its proper growth. And simultaneously, during the pregnancy and childbirth, women need to nurture the unborn baby inside the womb, and for that the women needs the nutrition for herself as well as the unborn baby. Now the scientific studies have helped us to understand what are the nutritional requirements of women at various stages of her life. Very often we think that nutrition is an important requirement for women only during pregnancy or childbirth, which is absolutely wrong. Basically, we need nutrition at every stage. However, at certain stages, that becomes very crucial, very critical. So, if we link nutrition with the reproductive health of women, that means this is a very critical stage, this is very crucial. At this stage, it has to be taken care of, otherwise the survival of the person will be under threat, right? So these are the periods where this is mandatory, this is very critical, but otherwise we need this at every stage of our life. And it is not just for women, it is also for men. In the forthcoming slides, we will see that how malnutrition is affecting not only women and children but also men, right? But again, this is very critical or very crucial, because the survival of women and children is depending upon that, as the world has been witnessing disproportionate infant mortalities, premature mortalities, and maternal mortalities, right? So because we have been witnessing that the world is having huge infant mortality at various levels, like the neonatal mortality or the infant or the under 5 mortality, and some of these mortalities are directly linked with malnutrition. Not all of these, but some of these are certainly related with malnutrition. And then the growth of the child is also related with that. And definitely for the women, we just talked about that, because she is carrying the responsibility of taking care of her own body as well as the body of the unborn baby. Now, one important thing that I would like to share here with all of you, that women in their early adolescence, even when there is no issue related to pregnancy or childbirth, even at that stage, they need very good nutrition, because if there is a problem of malnutrition, then that creates improper growth of the body of the women, and basically the functioning of some of the important organs, and that has some kind of adverse impact, right, in the later roles. That means nutrition is very important, very critical, very essential requirement, of course, for all, but more for the children and women. Now, here I have presented some of the statistics or some of the data that is made available by National Family Health Survey. We all know that in India we are having pan India data, basically that is collected by National Family Health Survey, that is governed by uh, government of India also, right? So these NFHS data are providing very vital information, right? We had different phases of NFHS data. In one of the lectures, we'll talk about the sources of data also. There we can talk about these things at detail, but here I'm talking about it very briefly. We are having different phases of, and whatever data I have presented here, this is related to the NFHS 4, which has provided these data at length, right? I have selected only those data which is related to the present topic here, right? That means food and nutrition, primarily nutrition. We will try to understand some important things through these slides. I will not suggest you to remember all these figures. Technically, it's not possible and not even required, right? But a basic understanding will be very helpful for you. And it will give you an idea that what kind of prevalence or what kind of patterns are actually existing. It will give you an awareness also, right? So there are so many information here, and all these information are basically taken from the NFHS reports which are available readily. These are the government publications, and these are available in the open access way, right? So no need of basically any kind of technicalities required here. These are readily available. Now just have a look on the percentage prevalence of children under 5 years who are stunted. Now what is stunting? Stunting means when the height of the child is not growing along with the age, right? So malnutrition is creating several types of problem. Very often that is related to disease, then it is causation of certain, for example, blindness is often caused because of the lack of specific nutrition, or several other diseases are caused because of several other lack of several other nutrition. But there are few things that we generally do not understand or don't know at length. That is why I've included that kind of thing only, because those are related with some kind of statistics also. So we'll talk about the stunted children, which stunting basically refers to when the height of the child is not increasing proportionately with the age, right? And this stunting is very much prevailing among the children under 5 years of age all over India. Here are some of the figures taken from the major states. Not all the data for all the states have not been provided, because otherwise it was not technically possible to include it in one slide, right? So the larger states, or the states which are having the prevalence at the odds, right, have been included here, right? So if the state is standing on either of the extremes in terms of good or bad prevalence, then I have tried to include, and I have also included some of the states which are larger in population, right? Just to make you understand, you can see the bars in different colors, right? So there is figure from NFHS 4 as well as NFHS 3, right? And then there is urban as well as rural population depicted. So I hope you can have a look and understand this. Now Bihar is the worst performing state, having the highest percentage, that is 48.3%, followed by Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Meghalaya, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Gujarat in terms of having the proportion of stunted children. That means these children are witnessing the problem of malnutrition. Malnutrition cannot be identified as the only cause of stunting, but majority of the researchers, and basically this report in itself is looking at it from that perspective, right? So some of the states which show huge difference between urban and rural areas under this category, such as Assam, has a difference of 15.7 percentage point. Now this slide is also showing you the difference between rural and urban. So there is a possibility that the urban children are having better health than the rural children, and these figures do suggest that, right? Because there is a kind of disparity is prevailing even within the state between the rural and the urban population. So this is showing, I mean, very difficult situation, right? Now, after having a fair understanding of the first slide, I don't need to explain all these slides because the pattern is like that, right? So you can identify the problem, and I will try to make you understand the problem itself, which about which we are actually talking about. So the second situation is wasting, right? So who are considered as wasted? Basically, when the weight is not increasing with the height. So in the first slide, we saw that the height is not increasing with the age. Now here we see that whatever height is there, but the weight is not in proportion to that, right? That means at one level we are having the problem that the height is not increasing along with the age. That is a different problem. Now, whatever height is there, the weight is not proportionate to that height. So this is another type of problem. This is identified as wasting. And now you can see the state of wasted children in under 5 age category in this slide. And if we compare the report of NFHS 3 and NFHS 4, we find that the percentage of wasted children under 5 years of age has increased in some states in last 10 years. Now that is very problematic. That even after having this detailed information, the statistics, the problem instead of getting reduced is actually not getting reduced, and in some of the states it's also increasing. That is an alarming situation. So you can have several patterns. You can read several patterns from these slides and these figures, and you can yourself have a look on the NFHS data. It will not be possible for me to talk about all these things, but yes, I have included some of the important points here also. It is very alarming to note that the all India average of wasted children under 5 years has increased to 21% NFHS 4 from 19.8%, that is NFHS 3. So not only that the some states is having this problem where the problem is increasing, but at the pan India level, the figures suggest that the problem has increased. That means at some level, we are not focusing on this problem. And the problem of malnutrition and basically the development of the children is at a serious level not being addressed appropriately. And that is why we need to talk about these problems when we are discussing the larger theme of public health, right? Then this figure is talking about underweight. We all know underweight, when the weight is not increasing appropriately, then there is a problem of underweight. Now, when you talk about underweight, there is also a problem of overweight, right? And most of the aged population in the urban areas, in many different types of situations, are also having the problem of overweight, and that is also considered as a serious problem because it enhances the susceptibility to many disease, right? That is obesity, but we are not talking about that. We are talking about underweight here, and the figures are here, and you can have a detailed glimpse on this. Then we'll talk about basically prevalence of the body mass, that is the weight of the women, right? So body mass index actually indicates the weight of the women in proportion to their height, right? And if we see the pattern here, we can find out several important things. Let me quickly talk about it. Huge disparity between rural and urban areas in percentage prevalence of BMI in many states like Jharkhand, then Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat and Rajasthan and even Uttar Pradesh. So these are the prevailing scenario. I have many more slides to show you. Then men whose body mass index is below normal, so the percentage and the prevalence of this BMI is also given for the men, so that we can understand that men's situation is also not that good. And then prevalence of anemia, basically we all hear about anemia, basically lack of blood in common parlance is generally understood as anemia. And we can see that among the children up to 5 years of age, 6 to 59 months, the prevalence of anemia is huge, and the pattern of the various states is given in this slide. And then basically prevalence of anemia during the pregnancy. Now you may remember, and you will see again, right, in some of the forthcoming lectures also, we have been talking about taking care of the women during pregnancy, right? And there are supplementary diet and all those things basically provided. But what is happening is that anemia is still prevailing among pregnant women, and that basically creates poor health for the women, and that invites problem for the unborn baby also. And these type of things are actually prevailing in many states, basically at all India level, and you can see the state level prevalence in these slides also. So now we come to the later part of this lecture, where we will talk about safe drinking water, because along with food we also need water for our survival. So water is very essential, very important, most important survival need of the humans, right? But although it seems that water is available readily, naturally all over the world, but not all water is safe for drinking. So here we are talking about safe drinking water. I have included some information here that talks about the availability, accessibility, and other related issues related to water at global level. So globally, at least 2 billion people use a drinking water source contaminated with feces. Now, the problem is not just about availability of water. The problem is that the water which is available is contaminated. Now, we have been talking about communicable disease, right? We talked about epidemics also. Now, one of the, rather the biggest cause of the spread of epidemic historically remain contamination of water, right? So we will see in some other lectures also that how water is one of the biggest source of causation of disease and sometimes even epidemics, right? So this water is contaminated. Then microbial contamination of drinking water as a result of contamination with the feces pose the greatest risk to drinking water safety. And that is why we talked about sanitation in the previous lecture, because sanitation is an effort to make us free from the germs and the bacteria. But what will happen when the water itself is contaminated? That's a very serious problem. Well, the most important chemical risk in drinking water arise from arsenic, fluoride, or nitrate. Emerging contaminants such as pharmaceutical, pesticides, etc., are itself or themselves very big challenge. Now, increasing use of pesticide, then insecticide is actually contaminating the water. Then simultaneously, what is happening that in the urban areas, the water level is actually declining, diminishing, right? That means in most of the urban areas, especially the metropolitan areas, either the water is contaminated or it is not even accessible because the groundwater or the level of water has declined, right? So there are serious, very serious issues related to availability of water and then quality of water. It is estimated that waterborne diseases have an economic burden of approximately 600 million US dollar a year in India. In India itself, there is a huge burden of basically the waterborne disease. This is especially true for drought and flood prone areas. Now, when we are talking about water, we also need to take into consideration the environmental aspects related to water, because in certain areas there is a lack of water that creates drought, and in other areas there is basically overflow of the rainwater that creates flood. So water management in itself is a big challenge, and because of the climatic issues we are witnessing that there are certain other problems arising, right? That means the water issue cannot be taken lightly. Although I could not talk much about this because of lack of time, but you can have a look on these slides. So before we close, let me talk about a positive intervention in India. India's flagship Jal Jeevan Mission is basically a novel approach to provide clean water to every child and every household in India. So, in 2019, the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation was restructured to approach the water sector in an integrated manner with the creation of the Ministry of Jal Shakti, bifurcated into two key departments: the Department of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, and the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation. It is under the latter a new national flagship program, the Jal Jeevan Water for Life mission started. So it is really good to know that the country has taken a very massive effort is at the level of the mission to ensure that the quality of water should get enhanced, and every household should get good quality water. But the problem is massive, and we need to understand the problems related to nutrition, food, and drinking water, and especially the safe drinking water from the perspective of public health, because we cannot ensure health without taking care of public health, and we cannot get good public health without taking care of all these components of public health. So thank you very much. We will meet in the next class. And before that, here is a slide which is showing the think about this problem and the activity question. So have a look on these things, and we'll meet in the next lecture. Take care. Bye.